family! Thank you for tuning in for yet another edition of Plant Dominant Dollars with Nina Fletcher. I am your host, Nina Fletcher, and today we are going to get right to it. Today's show is the food that you all ask questions on, and some of you say, I don't like it because it tastes like bugs. Quinoa. It does not taste like bugs. You just are not preparing it correctly. So today we're going to learn how to do quinoa quite a few different ways, okay? Yes. So let's get cracking. So let me start by introducing the quinoa. This you haven't seen before. Or maybe you have. This is black quinoa. There are many different kinds of quinoa. There's wild quinoa, there's black quinoa, and then there's the regular organic quinoa. Our first dish is going to incorporate the black quinoa. Black quinoa tends to be just a little bit more rich, okay, in taste, and I happen to prefer it with the dish that we're doing here. So we're gonna have black quinoa with seasoned vegetables, and you're gonna see exactly how I'm gonna do the vegetables. And we're gonna do that with some grilled mushrooms, grilled oyster mushrooms. So instead of doing all this talking, we're gonna get cracking. Today we're gonna use our food processor. Now, I heard some of you say, oh, you know, I can't afford some of the fancy stuff that you have and things like that. Listen, let me tell you something. You go get you a food processor at the thrift store. Right up there at the Goodwill, they have them. And they're very, very reasonable. They may only be about $15 for a good food processor because they last forever and they'll be a little bit old, but, you know, they'll still work just as good as anything new you could buy today. So, you're using a food processor. If you don't have a food processor, if you don't have 15 bucks, you can do it in a blender, because I used to do it in a blender. Okay? So, first, we're going to make sort of like, I want to say it's a sauce, but it's my basting liquid for when I make my curried mushrooms. So you're going to take a couple of tomatoes, you're just going to quarter them off. And you're going to put them in your food processor, okay? And you're going to just use the regular blending blade. In fact, I think I'm going to use 3 tomatoes. Why not? Okay. You're then going to take a couple of onions. Now, I don't necessarily choose to use shallots for this. For some odd reason, you just don't need the sweetness that the shallots gives you. Okay, so I'll take an onion and you just cut it up pretty coarsely. Plop it right in there, right? And I'm taking a red pepper. Now for this, I do like the spice. So you're going to use some of the seeds. Normally you see me pull the seeds out and throw them in the sink. We're not going to do that with that. So I'm going to use 2 red peppers. Okay. You're also going to use a couple cloves of garlic. All right, that's about 4 cloves of garlic that you're going to put in. You're also going to put just a little bit of ginger in. About an inch size. Okay, plop it in. Save the rest of it for tea. Okay. Let me rinse my hands real quick. All right, let's get started with some of our herbs. Now, for this, I chose a little bit of black basil, not a whole lot, just enough to flavor it. And of course, you've seen this before. I don't leave in the kitchen without sage. Always, there's some sage in the kitchen. There's also some of this in the kitchen at all times. You know what it is? Thyme. That's right. So you just spray some thyme in. And that is essentially your basting fluid, or your basting sauce, if you want to call it. So what you're going to do at this point, now we're going to get ready to start our food processor, but it doesn't end here because you have some other things that you need to put in, okay? So what I normally say is after you put your herbs in, okay, you're going to put just a little bit, believe it or not, this is dried sage. Put a little of that in, a little paprika. You're also going to put the littlest bit, let me see if I can find it. Oh, this is a little bit of red pepper. Just a little bit. And I didn't take out my curry powder. Just a little bit of curry powder. Okay. That coupled with a little bit of your salt. Actually, let me take this off. That might make it a little bit easier for the salt to go in. Now that's Himalayan salt if you're asking. A little bit of pepper. Grab your olive oil, and while you're pulsing your vegetables, just pour a little bit of olive oil in as you go. That was about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. When it's done, this is what it should look like. Okay? That's your flavor pack. Okay? So we're going to do a couple of things with this. Pay attention real good now. Turn on your pot to about medium heat. And this is before you put any water in there. You're just going to ladle a little bit . All of that goodness right into a pot. Wait for it to bubble up just a little bit. And as you can see, it's starting to bubble up just nicely. Give it a little stir. And it is at this point, once it starts to bubble up and get a little bit fragrant, you're going to put your quinoa in. Now, quinoa is 2 to 1 plus a fourth or a half. In other words, you have to sort of keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't dry out on you, okay? But it's real easy. And when I say 2 to 1, it's 2 cups of water to 1 cup of quinoa. And then on top of that, you put in like a quarter more so that it, you know, really gets done. So, I have about 2 cups of water I'm getting ready to pour in. But the first thing I'm going to do is put the quinoa in. Let me measure that out. So this is about a cup of quinoa. Oh, see, I measured it right by eye. I should have just put it in the thing. See, I tried to get, see, you people with the measuring cup stuff. I'm telling you, I didn't need it. Look, that's a cup. Look, I measured it out by eye in the bowl. Literally. And I said, okay, that's about a cup. But then I grabbed the measuring cup. It's a cup. I'm telling you, you can do this stuff by eye. Okay, so in with the mixture we just made goes the 1 cup of black quinoa. Stir it on in there. Make sure all of the quinoa is coated. And at this point, I do add just a little bit more salt. That's just me. Just a little bit more pepper. But you've got a lot of flavor in that flavor pack that's going to infuse into the quinoa. So once it's bubbling vigorously, as you can see, it's popping up a little bit on my backwash there. I'll get that. It is at this point when it is boiling vigorously, you pour in your 2 cups of water. And you're pretty much going to bring that back to a boil and let it go. Let it rip. Just let it go, right? Because it's got to come back to a boil. And once it comes back to a vigorous boil, just let it rip. Turn it to simmer and let it rip. It's got to sit there for about 20 minutes. Okay? Oh, and you know what? It's coming up quick, so I'm just going to watch it for 2 seconds so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. See how quick that came up? Give it a little stir. Make sure it don't stick at the bottom. And it's up. Okay, so now everything's returned to a vigorous boil. You turn that right on down to like 2, which would be simmer. Bring it to a simmer, let it rip. Just let it, don't even think about it, just let it go. Let it go. All right, so that is our black quinoa dish going on. That is dinner. So let's get moving with some other stuff. This one you're going to find quite interesting, okay? These are quinoa cakes. Now, I am a big one for saying, look, leave whatever, if you're going to use most of the ingredients, again, leave what was in there, especially if you're going to use it again, right? So, remember we just made the mixture to put into our quinoa, into our black quinoa. I'm going to leave that's about 2 tablespoons of it, right, for our next dish. And our next dish is going to be quinoa cakes, okay? And so here's your flavor pack, again, for the quinoa cakes. For this, we're not going to use black quinoa. This is the regular organic quinoa that you find in the store. Now this one I already pre-cooked because I wanted to show you what to do. You can make like a big pot of quinoa and store it in your refrigerator and then go back and do exactly what I'm doing now for the next few dishes. So you want to pay attention, okay? So what you want to do, and again, this is something I do by eye. Take your quinoa, go ahead and put it in. That's probably about a half a cup of quinoa. And I'm putting it right on top of the flavor pack that I just made for the rice. So you don't have to go about doing things twice, right? This, and I've talked about it before, blanched kale. All I did was boil it and then throw it in some ice water, okay? Put your little blanched kale in there. Okay? And then here is just some leftover boiled potatoes. You need a good binder. Okay, some people don't want to use potatoes. Okay, use flax seeds. You can do that, right? But I like my patties with just a little bit of potato in it. For this, I put in just a little bit of Lowry salt. And remember, you've got a lot of seasoning going on from the flavor pack anyway that you made earlier. A little pepper, a little bit of salt. Right on back. Perfect. Right on back with the food processor. Okay, so you've now blended that together. Now, if you look at it, that mixture is just a little bit wet because there's moisture in the quinoa. So you pull it out. It's all nice and seasoned. Smells so good. And what you're going to do is add just a little bit. Now, this is my flavor packet mixture that I make for flour, okay? It is panko crumbs, okay? And spelt flour, a little bit of thyme, and a little bit of dried sage, right? Put it right in to dry up the mixture a little bit. And that is something you're going to do by eye. This is where it gets just a little bit messy. So just be patient with yourself. All right, so this part, you get your hands just a little bit messy, but you'll be all right. So, at this point, I'm just going to put a little oil in my hands to stop it from sticking. It's at this point you form your patties. You do it just like you're making meatballs, right? Or meatballs or hamburgers, right? And you want to make sure you have a medium-high heated pot. Coat it with a little bit of the same mixture that you mixed in, which is the spelt flour and the panko chips, or excuse me, panko breadcrumbs. about 2 tablespoons oil. And you're going to take your cakes just like if you were making hamburger or salmon cakes. Put them right in. And just let them brown on either side. I'm just going to check on our quinoa. Our quinoa is coming along really nicely. You just sort of set that and forget it. Stir it every once in a while. Awesome. All right. So now while all of that is happening, I'm going to start yet the third quinoa dish. So far we have quinoa going for dinner. We have quinoa going for lunch, right? Now we're going to get quinoa going for breakfast. Very easy. I have yet another pot going. Medium heat. And again, this is your leftover quinoa, okay? And you don't even have to wait for the pot to get hot for this. Put a little bit in the pot. And this is just as easy as it comes. I like to put just a little bit of currants in my quinoa cereal in the morning. It will resemble oatmeal when you're finished, okay? I love to put a little bit of chopped walnuts. Put that right in. And notice I haven't really turned on the pot yet. It's just sitting on medium. You don't want to do that yet. Put in just a little bit of vanilla. And I'm going to take a quick pause here because I think our quinoa cakes may be ready to flip. Yeah? Okay, we put a little vanilla in there, and here is where just a little bit of grapeseed oil, just a little bit. And this is just me, but I prefer in my morning cereal a little bit of shaved apple. I told you this show was not going to be any joke. I needed to help you understand how versatile quinoa is and how much you can do with it. I need you to see it and appreciate it so that you don't keep throwing it out the window. It's an excellent grain. So what I've got in the pot is a little bit of quinoa, and I've got my currants, and I've got apples and walnuts. Now, what do you use to make it a little bit creamy? Almond milk. Pour that in. And you're also going to let that go a little bit. And by now, your quinoa cakes are about done. So I will show you and serve these up can have those with a nice salad. Okay? They are so tasty, it's ridiculous. Okay? So I'm going to sit these right here while I continue to put our meal together. So that's quinoa at lunchtime. We're still working on quinoa at breakfast here. I'm waiting for the pot to heat up a little bit. And our black quinoa is still going. Just let it rip, just let it roar. When it's done, you'll know it. Okay, so now while that is proving itself, I'm going to take this off the heat. Actually, I'm going to put that on the heat. That'll cool itself down. Okay. Ahead of time, I went ahead and made some mushrooms. Now, these are just this is going to be for another show, but I wanted to impress upon you the dinner part. So. Okay, so now our breakfast quinoa is kicking it up a notch here. This is exactly what I was waiting for. So once the steam starts coming off of it, you make sure all of your ingredients are well incorporated. And here you have quinoa cereal for the morning with just a little bit of grated cinnamon. And now our black quinoa is finished, and we're going to go right to the plate up, okay? So, follow me. We have our black quinoa with grilled oyster mushrooms, which we will do in another show. This represents quinoa at dinner. We have quinoa at breakfast. Now, there's one last thing I like to do with quinoa at breakfast. This is just me. To add a little sweetener, because if you notice while it was cooking, I didn't add the sweetener because the apples are sweet enough. I like to drizzle some gravy maple right on over the top. Yum. And it is so good. So now we have quinoa at breakfast. This would be sort of like oatmeal, but we're using quinoa instead. And we have quinoa at lunch. These are quinoa patties with kale and potatoes. So let me get a fork. And a knife. And as always, okay, let's start with breakfast. smells real good. I like to stir at it. Get some currants on there, some walnuts, and some apples. Quinoa for breakfast, definitely quick and good. Okay, let's do quinoa for lunch. Now again, you can have this with a salad. See the different layers in that? It's nice. It's good. Mmm. Quinoa at lunch. Good. All right. Let's do quinoa at dinner. And remember, quinoa is a whole grain, so it's so much better for you. It washes through the body a lot cleaner than it would, say, an oatmeal or anything with white flour or oat products. So that's why I prefer quinoa. So here's a little bit of quinoa and some oyster mushroom. Very good. Quinoa for dinner. So here you have it. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, quinoa. Good. I am your host, Nina Fletcher, and you are watching Nina, you Plant Dominant Dollars? Tongue tied because the food is so good. You are watching Plant Dominant Dollars with Nina Fletcher.
Thank you for watching Plant Dominant Dollars with Nina Fletcher. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tune in next week when Nina takes on
Vegan sweet potato pasta
here on Plant Dominant Dollars with Nina Fletcher. It's the genius!